Welcome back to another Supercoach video with me, Jackson, and this is a urgent, short notice video because we've had some huge news today that is going to massively change how Supercoach is played for the rest of the year. The COVID outbreak in Melbourne is only getting worse, and we've seen the first game kind of fall victim to it this year. So Gold Coast and Hawthorn, their game this weekend, will no longer be going ahead. The current plan for this game is that it will be postponed to next week. That's what the best thinking on this is, which means that they will not be playing this weekend. They will instead be playing through the next bye. So the implications of this are really huge. And we'll go through, I guess, firstly, the players that we could now consider because they're going to play through all three remaining byes. But there's two other probably bigger things that we need to think about. So first is this round is likely to be best 18. So we can see Tim, who is from the Herald Sun team, runs podcasts for them, does a whole bunch of great stuff, but is a big part of actually how Supercoach runs. For those that don't know, if you're not following him on Twitter, you're missing out. So he's mentioned that this precedent has been set last year. The best 18 scores will apply for this round. It is not going to be best 22. It's going to be best 18 this round, reminiscent of what happened last year in round 3 between Essendon and Melbourne when their game was postponed. So this is actually really big for Supercoach teams, and I'll show you a couple of ways how this could be really big this week. So if I just reverse my changes out before I do any trades. So there's, I'll show you a couple of ways. Effectively, it means that we can actually be a little bit tricky, a little bit more strategic with our trades this week. So the first way, well, there's the two ways in my team is Highmore, Murphy, and Jones. All three of these might miss this week. Jones is reportedly a test with an ankle injury, and we saw Highmore and Murphy both get sub games last week. Now, if all three of these are out, you know, people would normally look to trade one to cover a donut, to cover that zero, but if it's best 18, we don't have to worry about this week. So it does open up different options for us. And similarly, in the forward line, I might have been looking to try and get some of my worst rookies off the field. You know, I don't necessarily want to field Waterman, or like Rowe and then Waterman and Jones, but I don't have to worry about fielding a bad rookie this week because their score is likely not going to count. So this is a huge thing that you can consider when doing your trades this week. You actually don't need to rush to get a bad rookie off the off your field, because from what we've seen, their score won't count anyway. The second thing to consider is extra trades, and I think this might be tongue-in-cheek here, but someone said more trades, please. And Tim said, I've already asked Al for another 4. So one of the big changes that happened on the fly last year was these extra trades as the season got disrupted by COVID. So this tweet could be real, but it could be fake. So it's a bit hard to get a read on whether Tim's actually being serious here, because like the reason why I think he might not be serious is it's very different to Melbourne and Essendon last year, where due to the popularity of the players, like Viney, Gawn, Oliver, Merritt, there was about 2 or 3 other heavily owned Essendon players like Ridley and stuff, that people were missing 7, 8 players last year in round 3, which was crazy. But Gold Coast and Hawks players aren't particularly popular this year. So there's a chance that there's a chance that they don't rush to. I think there's a chance that they don't rush to actually activate those extra 4 trades. But if they are following the precedent of last year, which they are saying they're going to do with the best 18, then there is a chance we get those extra 4 trades. I think the other really big implication this week, when it comes to which players you can trade out and all that type of thing, is that Bose and CJ don't need to be traded. So if you held Bose last week for whatever reason, which was my original plan, and then we're going to trade him this week, you can actually wait again now because he's not going to lose price. You can take a 0 on the field. It doesn't really matter. And similarly with CJ. CJ is not going to lose you any money this week if you're hoping to trade him out. You can fix another problem and then look at swapping out CJ next week. And then finally, I guess the other thing to consider now is that these players, these Gold Coast, these Hawks players, will be playing through the byes now, which means that if you pick them up after this week, you're going to have that cover through all 3 games. Now, I don't think this is actually the most important thing to consider, and I think people are going to overreact to this. Because the reality is that the bye that the Hawks and Gold Coast had anyway, which was round 12, was already the bye people weren't really struggling with. We didn't really need extra people from that bye. So or I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't necessarily look to trade in next week people from the Hawks or Gold Coast just because they're going to play through all three buys, because the buy that they're helping out on was already the buy we were fine on. Now, this would be very different if it was, say, someone like the Dogs from the middle buy or Carlton from the middle buy or something like that, where bringing in those players can actually give you a huge advantage and really will help your buy structure. I just don't think that's the case. But if you are looking at bringing in someone after this week, I think there's really only two players I would consider from these teams at the moment. Sorry, I should say three. So if you don't have Impey, you should be jumping on Impey. One of the only concerns was that he actually shared the good buy with a lot of the other good forwards. And now that's no longer the case. So yeah, I would be jumping on Impey if you don't have him. But then the other two are midfielders. So the first is Tom Mitchell, who's sitting on the screen there, which is very handy. 553k. Won't be going up in price this week. You can jump on him next week after his buy and hold him through. If you think his form has turned around, he's a great, cheap M8 option, I think. He's got the runs on the board, and I would imagine after a week's rest, after a couple of seasons of injuries, I think he'll start to, or continue to get back to his best. I mean, he's done 2 140s in the last 3 games, but having his 70 dropped in the middle isn't particularly great. The other option, which is a bit of a pod, is Touk Miller. Where is he? So someone that's always pretty good every year, but I guess playing for the Gold Coast, he isn't considered as heavily as others. And he also has shown like some inconsistency in his scoring over the years. Now, the only thing I don't like about Touk Miller as a pick is that I am not sure how well he's going to score once Rao's back. And that's the big question mark for me, because he is the main person in that midfield at the moment. He really does lead them, and that spot is earmarked for Rao once Rao's back fit and firing. So if we see Rao coming back in a couple of weeks, does that affect Touk Miller's long-term scoring output? Now, the other thing I will say as well is, despite having an excellent 3 and 5 round average of 121, paying 600k for him seems really scary to me, especially when there are so many other midfielders that are a better price, that have, I guess better potential and scoring history in my mind. So Walsh, Merritt, Steele, and like even Mitchell, I think. I'd like, if you want a pod, I'd love Darcy Parish, but obviously the buys is why we're talking about Touk and Parish is bad buy. But I just can't see bringing in Miller or Mitchell being a great idea, and I think people are going to doing that as an overreaction. So I wouldn't do that. Now, there are 2 other big implications which is worth talking about, which is Reeves and Zach Smith. So these are the 2 rucks for the Hawks and Gold Coast. Reeves is 124k, has played 1 game. Zach Smith is 200 and something k, and is taking over as the primary ruck now that he's back from injury and Witts is out for the season. So many of us were looking at these 2 potentially next week as a downgrade option for Flynn. And those, I guess the thing is the downgrade is still going to happen, but we're going to have to wait a week to figure out if they're going to get the second game, how good they look in their second game, and then, extrapolate job security from that. So I guess that's worth keeping in the back of your mind. And then finally, Jai Farah is the only other one that I can think of that's worth mentioning. So he had been out with a quad injury, and after having the bye brought forward this week, he's no longer going to miss a game. He should be fit for the week after. So I think if you have Farah, he's a really good hold. He'll play through all the buys now, and should be back fit and firing. So yeah, I think that this is really big news. And so I think the big thing to take away from this is you don't have to trade off aggressively bad rookies or cover donuts if we're going to best 18, which I think is very highly likely. There is a chance we get extra trades, and if that is the case, it looks like we can be a little bit more aggressive with our trading again. We can look at, for example, if we get 4 extra trades, I now no longer have to have Brayshaw. I can sideways Brayshaw out because I'm going to have an extra trade. And I don't have to worry about carrying him through that last buy because I'll just sideways him to whoever from the middle buy. And then finally, I think the big thing is don't overreact to this. The players that we're getting were already in the good buy. There isn't really that much of an advantage by having them play the first buy as well in round 12 because we were already fielding 2021 anyway. So my big takeaway would be don't overreact and look at trading in Miller, Mitchell, etc. unless you were already considering them, because I don't think there is that big of an advantage. My fingers are crossed that this is the only COVID game, impacted game we're going to have for the year. But with the case numbers in Victoria at the moment, anything could happen in the next couple of days. Yeah, let's pray for the best, and I will see you all in the next one.